We would love to hear your voices. If you would be so inclined, feel free to open up and have a conversation with us. We're still about 4 or 5 minutes from starting, so we are good. So as we are onboarding individuals, we just want to make you aware of an upcoming grant deadline for the Nebraska Affordable Housing Trust Fund applications. That deadline is May 13th. And with the new AmpliFund process, those have to be uploaded no later than 6 o'clock. I have not tested that, but as Evan, that DED housing specialist, has said, 6:01, you are too late. So be sure and get those turned in promptly on or before May 13th at 6 p.m. And if you have any questions about a trust fund application, there are the various program representatives that cover the state of Nebraska listed: Christy McClung, Laura Hart, Barb Pierce, and Nick Drapinski in their respective regions. To submit a trust fund application, of course, you would have had a pre-app turned in last month, or was it earlier this month? They all kind of are running together right now. But feel free to check that out with either Evan or one of the program reps for the Department of Economic Development. So feel free to take advantage of their knowledge and expertise about that program. So if you are a first-time attendee of HomeNE today, we just want to say thanks for checking us out. We are a learning network in our 3rd year, and we hope that you'll find today informative and make future participation in our learning network a priority. We do this the 3rd Thursday of every month with the exception of December. And we also recognize that many of you participate frequently. And so whether this is your first or many of HomeNE webinars that you've attended, we just appreciate you being here and making this hour a priority. So if you are just joining us, you've not missed anything. We are just kind of doing a discussion and doing some informal welcomes. I know a lot of you are joining us here right now, so just feel free to sit back. If you'd like to say something, feel free to open up your microphone. We'll get started here in just a few moments. So we are just making you aware of the trust fund applications that are due on May 13th, and that information is on your screen. So,
Lori, I'm very excited to announce that we are live on YouTube.
yes. Yay. Yes.
Christy is monitoring our YouTube channel, so we do have a few viewers over there, but we can't tell who you are. So if you are on the YouTube channel, please drop a note in the comments and let Christy know you're there today.
Yes, we don't have a camera on Christy, but she and Sherry are handling the YouTube aspect of our broadcast or stream today, and we appreciate their efforts in that. If you remember last month, we tried Facebook Live, and that didn't go quite as well as we had envisioned it to go. So, Tim, you are embarking on a new adventure with us today.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So let's just give our participants another couple minutes, and then we can get started. So. We've got a lot of good information that's going to be shared today, so I do want to start here shortly. But as I mentioned, welcome, and if you've joined us the first time today, or if you've been a regular participant, we greatly appreciate you devoting this hour of your day to the HomeNE Learning Network. So I think we'll go ahead and get started. I do want to honor everybody's time, and our speaker today does have a lot of great information, and I want to give him every opportunity to share as much as he has. So let me just say good day to everybody. I'm Lori Ferguson with South Central Economic Development District here in Holdridge. Snowy Holdridge, I will point out, I am tired of winter. So, and I am your tour guide for today's conversation. I thought last month we had set a record that would be in the record books for a very long time in terms of participants and registrations for HomeNE, but today's number is even higher than it was last month. Our registration for today's meeting is 121 people, completely off the charts, and we are very thankful for that. So whatever your reason for joining us today, I just want to say thank you. We are showing on your screen right now the numbers and the statistics for our HomeNE Learning Network. Cumulatively, since we started this, we've had almost approaching now 400 individuals register for our webinars and our gatherings. Today's registrations, 119 communities to date have signed on to HomeNE, and 121 registered for today. So looking back over the last couple years of HomeNE, we've had an average of 90 people per webinar, and that's just a really exciting number. And in addition to setting a new benchmark for registrations, we have a new number for first-time participants registered today. So we greatly appreciate those numbers. And we're not just a Nebraska Learning Network now. These numbers don't reflect it, but we have individuals joining us from Oregon, Arizona, Texas, and Missouri. To hear Tim Gottgetru. Did I pronounce that correctly,
You did.
Tim?
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. As he shares information direct from the Nebraska dashboard. And as Sherry mentioned earlier, we are streaming this live on YouTube today. So if you do have difficulty or you know somebody who would like to join in, feel free to direct them to that service. So Tim Gottgetru will be speaking about the Nebraska dashboard, and our agenda is, as I mentioned, Tim speaking, and then we'll follow that up with questions for the speaker, as well as a group discussion and final thoughts. So before I turn it over to Sharon to introduce Tim, I just encourage you, as I usually do, to use the chat box through Tim's presentation. Make that your resource to ask questions, offer comments. Let us know how his presentation is resonating with you. Maybe you have a new statistic that he has shared that you've never heard before that you want to say or tell us about. Maybe you have a question that you just have to know the answer to today. We'll be happy to ask that of Tim either during his presentation or at the conclusion. Or maybe there's something that you want to share with others in your community or those of us joining together today in this virtual community. So leave your comments, drop in your questions, and make that chat box a resource or a dialogue center for yourself and all of us here today. HomeNE is a learning network, and as you hear us say frequently, if you join us, that we feel that we learn best when we interact and engage with each other. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sharon.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're enjoying this time of staying inside. My granddaughter is 8 today, one of them, and I told her, if this is the weather that you order on your birthday, you don't get to have any more birthdays. So hopefully it'll improve from here. I told her the day she was born, it was a beautiful day. So welcome to the April edition of the HomeNE 2020 webinar series. As you know, the South Central Economic Development District acts as the lead agent for these webinars and semi-annual gatherings. And what is HomeNE? It is a learning network that was established in 2017 with people like you in mind. We want to build a network of individuals and communities with a shared interest in assessing and addressing housing issues in rural communities. We want to provide a safe space to be vulnerable about what's been tried and find motivation to take one more step in the right direction, to learn from the successes and struggles of others, to take away new ideas or see things through a new lens, and to inspire you, because what you are doing is valuable. Nobody can or will do it quite like you. And now is the time to leave your mark on the universe. So quickly, just to share with you the growth of the HomeNE Learning Network in the past 2 years. If you're on your computer, you can see the home location of webinar series participants. That is not a COVID map. This is a good map. Those red dots are good things. So today we will be hearing from Tim Gottgetru. Tim is the Director of Research at Western Economic Services based out of Portland, Oregon. He's been studying housing issues across the country for over 13 years, authoring numerous reports ranging from housing needs assessment to housing forecasts to analysis of impediments of fair housing choice. He's the lead developer for the Nebraska Dashboard, and he's been invited to speak at the NIFA Housing Conference for the last 8 years. He holds a master's degree in economics from the University of Maine, and in his spare time enjoys playing and recording music. And I'd be interested in that Maine to Oregon.
Yeah.
Seems like maybe you don't drop south, but boy, you.
No, yes. It was it was to start a PhD program that I unfortunately was unable to get through. Dynamic equations got me.
Oh man, well, welcome, and I will turn it over to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. First off, I want to say thank you for inviting me onto the webinar today. It's a pleasure to actually talk to people. I'm in Oregon, so this is the 5th week of quarantine. I haven't seen a lot of people, so it's wonderful to say hello and get some social interaction. Second, I want to say thank you to NIFA, who sponsors the profile and the dashboard, especially Rob and John and Royce. I've been working with them for a number of years. They're a great organization. And I'm sorry that I wasn't able to come to the conference, and I'm sorry that got pushed back, but I hope to see everyone in June or whenever that is back on. So I have been giving this kind of a presentation and spiel at the NIFA conference for the last couple of years now, and I do listen. So one thing that came out of the conference last year was a lot of rural cities, smaller areas, said, well, this is all great, but where is the data for my town or my city or my village? So we actually went back to the drawing board and we added all the cities in Nebraska. So there's about 534 cities and villages, along with 93 counties, 8 regions, and statewide. So normally I start out the presentation by showing hands how many people have heard of it and worked with the dashboard. I'm guessing that's not possible. I can only see a finite number of folks on my screen, but I'm hoping that there is some, familiarity with it. If not, I'd be happy. That's why we're here, to introduce it. So the Nebraska Dashboard is kind of like an online data portal for a massive written report that sits, that we call the profile. The Nebraska profile, we've been publishing since about 2003, so over 17 years, and it's been growing every year, both in scope and page number. So this year, I think we're pushing, the whole report is over, several thousand pages, 5,000 or 6,000 pages. So it's a lot of information. It's very dense. It's not necessarily a light read, but if you're a planner or someone in the housing industry or demographer, it's great and very, very useful information. So the report, like I said, is very long. It's very comprehensive as well. So we tried to build kind of this online platform on top of it to get to the information that you want more quickly. And then, you can always download the big report that actually has more information in it at the end. So, okay, I have control of the screen. So this is the dashboard. Just gonna do a fresh restart. Can I do that? Great, just to have it. You can find it at nestats.org. You can play along at home if you'd like to. So there we go. It's the 2020 profile of Nebraska. We always organize the profile in kind of like a demographic, economic, and housing segment. It's kind of the easiest way to get your mind around this massive amount of data. And then, so we kind of drive with the Nebraska dashboard controls over here. And then we have a number of tabs. That's, okay, sorry, it's a little slow on this one, that, show the different information. So the idea also here that makes the dashboard really nice and interesting is you can compare 2 regions. When we do a written report, or if you get a written report, it's basically one region or a city or something compared to either your county or state or something like that. Here we can compare any county to county, any region to region, county to state, city to city, city to county. So if you're interested to see similar cities, you can compare city to city numbers or city to county. So it's, the level of comparisons is massive, with the factorials very insanely hard to compute. Royce would probably be able to help me out with that though. So I'm going to kind of drive through here. The Nebraska dashboard controls is this panel over here. So that's kind of how most of the dashboard is driven, quote unquote. You know, but first I want to see region, county, city. That's all pretty familiar. We have a number of kind of standard regions. Unfortunately, they don't necessarily align with current, you know, any particular region. Here's a map of the regions just to give you an idea of what's going on with the regions. So these are the standard level regions. So when you see the regional analysis throughout the dashboard, these are the regions. So the closest we can get for, you know, the South Central region, this is not exactly what we want for, you know, South Central Economic Development region. So we added a custom region generator. So if you want to get some information on a number, you know, just a specific number of counties, you can go ahead and do this here. I think we start Phelps, Harlan, Franklin, Kearney, Adams, Webster, Buffalo, Hall, and Merrick, that one. So you can kind of design your own custom region analysis to see what's going on. You press the Create Region button, and boom, we have a, you know, good slew of information about what's going on in the region. The other fun thing about the dashboard is we try to make it all completely interactive and playable. It's kind of like how you get your hands dirty in a data set. You can't do that on a written report. And sometimes, you know, when you're thinking about data, you're really in the end trying to put a story together in your mind. What is this data telling you? Because a data point is just, it's just a number. It doesn't have any context behind it. So by playing with the data in a dashboard, you can kind of build up a story of like, oh, what's going on? What's really happening here? You know, like I said, it's all fully interactive. So you unclick and click, you can just, you know, it'll respond, and you can kind of see what's going on in the custom region. And we see the population is increasing about 175,000 persons. Also, not only is it interactive, but it's, you know, we try to make it available for you to be downloaded or, you know, as useful as possible. You know, we're doing this to make it useful for everyone. So you can also print the chart, you know, any chart or anything like that, download the chart as JPEGs, PDFs, or download the CSV in an Excel file if you actually just want the underlying data. It's all right there. It's totally there. With the upcoming census that's being released, the Census Bureau stopped using American Fact Finder, which was already a tricky program to extract data from the census. Now they've come up with this data.gov thing, which is even a little more harder to understand. So if you just want to get some population estimates or anything like that, this is a great place just to come. I can just get, you know, population, age, race, whatever, and just download it, and boom, you have it. It's all right here. Or, you know, you can just download the reports, and it's, you know, it's also, the reports are compiled with all the data as well as the analysis for you. And again, kind of we work down the regions, area, county. You know, here's 93 counties. All 93 counties have all the data in the dashboard and everything like that. They also have, like I said, a written report that goes along underneath the dashboard that contains even more data, a lot more data. So definitely check that out. And then new for this year, and we're so excited about this, is adding all of the cities. All previous iterations of the dashboard and profile only had 31 cities. Quick note, there are only still 31 written reports. We don't have written reports for all 534 cities yet. We're kind of working on that or thinking about how to do that. But, you know, you can still get a good amount of information with the dashboard to all the small cities and villages throughout the state. We are going to, for today's presentation, we're going to look at Blue Hills. Where'd you go? I just saw it. Blue Hills. To kind of show you what data is available for kind of smaller level cities. So first thing you always want to do is check out population. What's going on in the population? Blue Hills, is, you know, the y-axis is pretty different when you add the state of Nebraska. So if you click the state of Nebraska button, it goes away, and then you can get a clearer picture of what's going on. City of Blue Hills. City of Blue Hills peaked in 2010 at about 936, and you know, has been steadily declining since then, falling to about 174 persons in the most recent 2018 post-census estimate. My firm has also been involved in the consolidated planning process and analysis of impediments of fair housing choice for the state of Nebraska with the Nebraska Department of Economic Development. So I've been studying a lot of statewide data as well, and this kind of trend where we see decent population growth going up to and even through the Great Recession, especially when the housing bubble burst, is kind of a trend that's, you know, seen throughout Nebraska. Nebraska peaked at about 4.2% unemployment rate during the height of the Great Recession, compared to a 13% national rate. So a lot of people moved to Nebraska during the Great Recession because there were jobs there. So, oh, custom regions comparison. Oh, there we go. Royce got it. I knew he would. So Royce says without custom regions, about 405,000 different combinations in the dashboard. Thanks, Royce. That's fun. So, this is a trend that we have been seeing throughout the state, increasing population during the Great Recession. But as soon as kind of the rest of the country started to recover, population kind of also started to decline throughout certain areas of Nebraska. Or at least when we look at labor force statistics. Here we do see population for the state of Nebraska rising pretty linearly, which is great. All right, what else is available in the city of Blue Hill? So we're just going to kind of dive down the demographic, economic, and housing tabs and see what we have. Here the population, we break it down by race, ethnicity, poverty, disability. We chose these concepts kind of based on, planning documents. We work with a lot of cities, states, and local governments that have to file certain reports with HUD. So we based around these concepts that are most important for those types of purposes. But if you have an idea of something that you would like to see on this dashboard, just send me an email. Like I said, we are doing this for you guys. So let me know and I'll see if I can get it in. We want to make this as useful as possible to as many people as possible. So we'll just take a look at the educational attainment in the city of Blue Hill City. Most recent 2018 American Community Survey. That's what the ACS stands for. Again, we'll kind of get this out here. We'll go to 2018 stuff. Get it, sometimes too much data can be a bit of a hazard. We see here that the city of Blue Hill is in orange. I should make it blue. That would be cool. Custom colors. Note. But we see here that bachelor's degree compared to the state of Nebraska is slightly smaller with about 14.3% with a bachelor's degree compared to 19.5% statewide total. However, when you look at graduate degrees, about 10.2% of the population in the city of Blue Hills has a graduate degree compared to 9.2% for the state of Nebraska. So, in same sort of associate's degree, high school equivalent, much higher. So you're seeing, although the population rate is declining slightly over the last couple of years, the actual educational attainment in the most recent 2018 data shows slightly more educated areas than the statewide as a whole. All right. So, there's a whole bunch of stuff. When we talk about non-Hispanic by race and Hispanic by race, those again kind of are based from the HUD-CHAZ idea, where HUD, in the census, you have a race and an ethnicity. So you can be white, non-Hispanic, white, Hispanic, African-American, Hispanic, African-American, non-Hispanic. When you're dealing with HUD data or, certain programs that are required by HUD, they like to group it together where they first split it out by ethnicity, where you identify as Hispanic or not, or non-Hispanic, and then they break out non-Hispanic by race. So that's kind of why we get things in here like this. But we do see here that city of Blue Hill in the most recent ACS stuff is more white than the state of Nebraska, 97.6%. But overall, Nebraska is a fairly homogeneous state. But, so we provide this data, to see anything. Just to let you know that all of the tables are clickable. So you can sort them. So if you want to see the percentage of total, you just click on the total. It'll sort descending by total. So white and two or more races in the most recent 2018 stuff compared to, in the state. Another thing I want to show off, and this is available on all demographics, economics, and housing slides, are these top things, these little, what they're called bullet charts. There's a lot of information packed in these bullet charts. That's why I put them there. First off, you can see the population growth from 2010 to 2018, and we see that it's a negative 7.1%. Underneath that, it'll give you the rank of population growth for every city or village in the state. So we see of all the towns and the cities and villages, the city of Blue Hill is ranked 477th out of 530 for the population growth rate. Then when you kind of look over at this is the actual number of the growth rate. So we saw that earlier, negative 7.1%. The black line is the statewide average. So you can see it's quite a bit below the statewide growth rate. So you can see that right there, how it compares to the state. You can see how it compares to other cities. And then, this kind of bullet chart, these bands of green, kind of shows you the dispersion of the data set that you're looking at. So we break that into quantiles. So there's 5. We basically take all the population growth throughout the state and evenly divide it up into 5 segments. And then we chart that. So we can see here that of the top 20%, there's a pretty wide variation in population growth, with some areas growing from here all the way to above 50%. The highest one, for whatever reason, is Banner County, and it's a very small population state. And every time I see that, I think that maybe they just had a huge barbecue when the census was taken. So, it's only there's only a couple hundred people there, and then they have a huge growth rate. So I'm guessing barbecue. I could be wrong. Then we also see aging population. So that's the population aged over 55. We see here that the Blue Hill City is slightly older than the statewide rate as a whole, because the yellow bar is over the black bar. And then down here is the minority population. The percent of non-white population we see much lower than the statewide average as a whole, but still only, in the middle third quintile. It's a very, very small band. So these are all available on the demographic, economic, and housing tab. I just chose three three of the most important concepts to chart those out. So just by looking at that, if you know what you're looking at, you can get a lot of information of the city or a place or the county or anything. So this is kind of the demographics. There's a whole slew of it. Again, play along at home. Please let me know if you have any other things that you'd like to see. We'll move on to economics. Okay. There's not a lot of economic data for smaller, more rural cities across the country, really. Larger cities, you can actually get Bureau of Labor Statistics data, where you can actually have the unemployment rate and the actual, local area unemployment statistics. But that only goes down to a certain population level. Below that, you really don't have too much, until the 2018 American Community Survey came out. And I was so excited to see this, because this data kind of mimics the Bureau of Economic Analysis data, where they correlate 21 industry classifications and put it together. So the census kind of got on board with the BEA data classification system that's only available by county and state. If you're digging around in the county box, you'll see a whole lot of economic information about all of these types of employments. But not so much for smaller city level stuff. So when this was out, I was very excited that we were able to do a chart like this. Quick side note on the data. This is a survey data, American Community Survey. So it's all self-reported. So, if you're a teacher, you're going to say you work in the educational industry. Absolutely, you do. However, for the Bureau of Economic Analysis data set, county and state and, national, teachers and hospital workers at, government hospitals are actually government employees. So you see a large amount of government employees, but that includes teachers and, certain medical workers at public facilities. So the data don't necessarily line up exactly, but this is great because we can see here the bottom axis, the x-axis is the number of persons employed. The y-axis is the median earnings per industry. And then the size of the bubble is the percentage share of the employment for, the city as a total. So we can see here, just quick off the bat, education is the largest, employer in the city of Blue Hill, or Blue Hill, Blue Hill, with a median earning of about $54,000. Then we kind of go back here, healthcare, again, about 31,000 median income with about 50 people employed, followed by manufacturing and retail. Farming, Nebraska's, in rural areas in Nebraska, you get a lot, get farmers. We have a median earning, the highest median income earning in the city at 72,000 and about 16 people employed, And then we have a kind of a cluster down here lower with government, wholesale, construction, food sale, retail. So this chart is available for every city, all 530 of them plus, 530 of them. So that was really exciting to see when that came out. Actually, I want to keep that open. And we'll just kind of take a peek at what's happening in the state of Nebraska as well. And we see here kind of the same trend. So my webcam's in the screen here. Let me move that. With healthcare, and second highest is manufacturing, followed by retail. So again, you can see all of this information for state, county, city. It's all right here. So we're excited that we have this data to share with you. Okay, let's go down there. The other economic tab that we have here is unemployment. Now, like I was saying before, the unemployment rate from the local area unemployment statistics, what you hear about when the government in the news when they say the unemployment rate is 4.5%. That comes from the Bureau of Labor for Statistics, and that only goes down to a certain population threshold. This data comes from the 2018 American Community Survey, so it's not necessarily as temporally accurate as the 2018 stuff, but it's what we have. which is great, and it kind of gives you an idea of what's going on in the labor force. We see here that unemployment rate is about 3.3%, and we have a nice little chart showing what's going on in the labor force. Not in the labor force, about 30.6%, 67.1% of all persons are employed. I calculated the numbers up here to actually show employed and unemployment rate. The numbers down here, because you don't get calculated as being unemployed if you're not in the labor force. So the numbers down here represent that. They represent total population. And the numbers up here as a percent represent only those in or out of the labor force. So that's why we see unemployment rate of 3.3%, which is very low. So that's good. Again, we see bar charts up here. Earnings, the median earnings, they're about middle of the state for cities. They're ranked 242 out of 530. Below the statewide rate because it's below that black bar, but they're in the top third quintile. So basically right in the middle. Of the spread throughout for all the cities. Unemployment rate, the bullet chart down here, we also see a slightly higher unemployment rate than the statewide average, but pretty good, 183 out of 530. Okay. So okay. So those are the two economic ones. If the county or the county and the state level stuff have way more economic data available, and some of the larger cities do as well. I encourage you to come back to this and play around with it. And if you have any questions or whatever, always feel free to email me. We're a small team and we're very reachable. So yes, please let me know. Moving on to the housing tab, there's a whole slew of housing data. There's a lot of great housing data in the census, and the census goes down to lower level place geographies. So we were able to scoop up a lot of that. And then there's also for this year, we're not there yet, but I just can't help myself. This CHAZ tab, Comprehensive Housing Affordability Strategy Data Set. We'll dive into that later. So this is very heavy on the housing front, which is good. So we see here the median value. I got to fix that M so everyone can see it. The median value of a home owner occupied house in the city is about 106,000. That's ranked 112 out of 530. So it's a pretty high, a higher homeowner value, compared to all of the cities throughout Nebraska. In the second highest quintile, but much lower than the statewide average, which again is that black bar. Median rent is about $403. That's much lower. That's in the fourth highest quintile, much lower than the statewide rate. And home ownership rate, much higher than the statewide rate at 73.6%, ranked at 343. So again, these are the bullet charts up here. Always just take a, yes. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't follow the questions. I'll hit the questions later. And then I'll kind of look through those as well. We do see here single family permits. There's a whole slew of housing data. Let's get that big. We'll start with the city, and then I'll tell the statewide story. This is single family permits. So anytime anyone wants to go build a house, they have to go get a permit, so it's built correctly. Then that, they have to file it with their city, and then the census comes down and collects that information and makes it available for analysis. And here it is. We have single family, duplex, triplex, and multifamily units. If you look at just the actual permits, we see sporadic building happening in Blue Hill. A couple permits here. A spike of 6 in 1996, but not too much recent permitting activity in the last couple of years. 1 in 2013, 2 in 2011. Then you can overlay the value. The value of the permit excludes cost of the land. So it's really only the cost of materials and the cost of, building the house. So it's certainly an undervalue of what's going on. But here you can really kind of see, although, you see the spikes going down, if you drew a line, like a nice trend line, you would certainly see the real value of single family permits increasing over time, certainly from the 90s. And that, again, is a trend that's been happening all over Nebraska and, quite frankly, all over the United States. We work in a lot of different places, a lot of different states, and that's just the story that, that's just what's going on. More to the point, oh no, we'll look at the state of Nebraska. I kind of want bar charts. Here we go. We see permits. State of Nebraska single family permits. Again, here we see increasing. right here, this is about the time period of the housing bubble. So that's the kind of ramp up to the before the Great Recession. And then we see a solid, or, a pretty large decrease in single family permit production as, the housing market collapsed. So this chart is also very similar across the country, but rebounds and kind of at this new normal around hovering around about 5,000 single family permits per year in the state. If you draw back, we're kind of looking at, levels that are very similar to the 1990s as well. So if you kind of just draw a line there, and then, if you play Tetris with your mind and drop this hole in this hole, it kind of fills it in. So basically, on average, the state of Nebraska has been producing about 5,000 single family permits a year. That's pretty constant for the last 30 years. But if you remember, the population has been increasing very, very, pretty linearly. So although the population has been increasing, housing production has essentially remained flat. Then when you draw the value on top of that, and you see the value has been increasing almost linearly as well for the last 30 years, you kind of get this perfect storm of housing affordability where you're having, solid housing production, that's true, but the cost of that housing, the cost of the newer housing especially, is more expensive. You have population growth rate, so you have essentially, increasing demand. Supply is kind of held constant, and the actual, supply that is coming on the market is also more expensive than it has been. So there's kind of this perfect storm of housing affordability issues in the state. That's why we kind of look at the CHAZ data set. So that's single family permits. Again, we have so many, a lot of it. We also have total permits, all sorts of fun and groovy things. Total permits include multifamily permits. If you just want to see multifamily permits, apartment complex, things like that, that's what we have here. I don't think we have many in Blue Hill. Just double checking. No, didn't think so. So no multifamily permits being built in the last couple of years. But we have all of these kind of things. We can look at the housing by unit type. And we see here the majority of households or housing stock in Blue Hill are single family dwellings. Go away. About 84.1% of all housing stock in Blue Hill is a single family house. Then we have some duplex, triplex 7.7. So much higher single family and smaller unit residences, which makes sense. It's more rural state. Statewide average obviously, includes data from Lincoln and Nebraska, Lincoln and Omaha. So yeah. Oh, great. So mobile homes, and I love this, the boat RV. I love that. Whenever I see someone living in a boat RV, boat would be great. Although I did hear from Royce that Nebraska has more, river frontage than any other state in the country, which I thought was amazing. So I was hoping maybe we did have some boats and RVs living there. Who knows? Maybe boats. But then we have household income, household size, vacant units, all those kind of things. Okay, now we're gonna drop some definitions. So housing problems. Housing problems is a term that is, it's a definition from HUD. It's a specific term. You have a housing problem if you suffer from one of four conditions. The first condition is you are lacking complete kitchen facilities, like you don't have a refrigerator in your kitchen, you have a housing problem. The second is you're lacking complete plumbing facilities, like you don't have a sink in your bathroom. That's a housing problem, and you're a housing problem. The third is being overcrowded. That means you have more than one person per room in your dwelling unit. You're overcrowded and you have a housing problem. If you have more than 1.5 persons per room, you are severely overcrowded and then you have a housing problem. The majority of those make up a relatively small share of housing problems and are also not necessarily the largest problem. I mean, you want a refrigerator and you want a complete bathroom. But the biggest and most common, and unfortunately the hardest to solve, is cost burden. Cost burden occurs when you spend above 30% of your income on housing costs. Your cost burden, you have a housing problem. When you spend above 50% of income on housing costs, you are severely cost burdened. And when you start looking at the number of severely cost burdened households in an area, in a census, or in a place or a county, you're looking at households that may be only 1 or 2 paychecks away from then experiencing homelessness or a need for some, rental assistance, things along those lines. So when we're looking at housing problems, again, housing problems are specific terms as defined by HUD, and we want to show what's going on. Cost burden owner, without mortgage, and renter. I think it is all cost. I think it's household cost. So we have here owners with mortgage and owners without mortgage. We'll do cost burden renter. We have a lot of this data, you know, dialed down into the CHAZ data land, but here's the number of cost burden renters, and you can compare it to the statewide as a whole. Not a lot of renters in Blue Hill, so I should choose a different one. But we see here most, you know, 65% of all renters in Blue Hill are not cost burden, so that's good. Much lower cost burden than the statewide as a whole. Severe cost burden is trending relatively similar. Let's go with owner occupied with mortgage. I will fix that spelling. Every time I open this up, I see something with mortgage. Let's see if that works. No cost burden, cost burden. Yeah, so here we go. We also see, you know, slightly higher cost burden, no cost burden, slightly higher cost burden rates. So those are all housing problems, and these are all data from the 2018 5-year American Community Survey. They're all right here, so you can compare them to the statewide as a whole. This CHAZ data tab is a special tabulation of those data concepts, but they're broken out by a whole slew of different housing subtopics, like race, family type, housing problem type, age of structure, presence of young children. If you want to dial down into lead-based paint stuff, you know, you can find that. So we'll kind of jump into this CHAZ data. Yeah, now let's do it. Kind of roll into it. So this data is new for this year. This data, we only have a couple of tables in the dashboard, but each city in the printed report and each county and everything got a whole slew of CHAZ tables. So it's a big set of data. This data is required by the federal government when you're supporting, when you're submitting applications for HUD funding, for community development block grant funding, that kind of thing. It's specifically made for consolidated planning efforts. So it's very important for entitlement jurisdictions. Now, smaller place level, you know, smaller places across more rural areas aren't necessarily entitlement jurisdictions, but if they're applying for those type of loans to, let's say, the non-entitlement area of the state of Nebraska, it's good to have this data, because then you can kind of match it to what the state data or that level has. So if you're looking for, let's say, loans or things for you know, rental assistance, you can say, look, we have X amount of people with you know, a cost burden that need assistance. So this is where you'd get that information, and then you can bring it up to you know, community development block grant planners that speak that language. Here, this is a really fun and new chart. It's called a sunburst chart. It's kind of a nested table. CHAZ, Comprehensive Housing Affordability Strategy Data Set. The C is for comprehensive, so it's a very massive data set. So we try to slice it up as easily as possible. Here we can see this is for Blue Hill, and you can see right off the bat, the first ring, you can see no housing problems, accounts for a good chunk, you know, about 80%. No housing problems, everyone's fine. They don't suffer from any of those 4 conditions. However, this chunk right here, about 66 households in the city have a housing problem, and you kind of zoom in. So everyone now in this chart has a housing problem. And then you can see owner and renters, so you can check out the tenure share. So if you're concerned about renters, what kind of renters do we need? We have 24 renter households in the city of Blue Hill that have a housing problem, and we zoom in and we can evaluate them by racial characteristics, and by income. And we see here the majority of renters have under 30% median family income and are experiencing a housing problem that's probably cost burden or severe cost burden. So yeah, that makes sense. If you're making that low, you're gonna have a hard time you know, breaking over that barrier. When you're looking at owner occupied housing, again, we have racial breakdowns. This is housing problems by race, white households, and we have 4 Asian households in the city that are experiencing a housing problem. And then you can kind of zoom in and see of the white households, we see here that there's that under 30% MFI again. Maybe they inherited a house or something along those lines. But then here we see this 50 to 80% median family income. That's where we're kind of starting to talk about workforce housing or housing, you know, affordable housing options for those in the workforce, you know, teachers, firefighters, police officers. So 30 to or 50 to 80, 80 to 100. So we see, you know, there are 15 homeowners white homeowners in this area with housing problems in this income range. So it's It's really, really, C is for comprehensive. And I kept saying that. I was like, C is for comprehensive. And I thought it was a joke. And I told that to my wife, and I was like, nobody's laughing. Like, this joke's not working. And she's like, that's not a joke. It's a definition. So there's the joke. Okay. Sorry. All right. Like I said, I haven't been out in 5 weeks. So then we have a whole number of different CHAZ types here. Severe housing problems by race, by problem type. So we can really see what's going on. Again, all of this stuff. The sunburst is nice to get an idea of what's going on and kind of explore the different areas. But if you actually want the tables, the actual physical numbers, or virtual numbers here, here's some tables. So we can kind of see here that, of all the homeowner housing problems, we have about, 20 severely cost burden, 27 cost burden, broken down by income, no housing problems there. Here's renters. So we can really kind of see that the majority, like no one's lacking kitchens, no one's cost or overcrowded. It's mostly just cost burden, severe cost burden, and here's renter. So yeah, there's a whole slew of data here for that. It's a really big data set. We will continue to keep adding to it. The printed reports have all of it in it. We keep trying to keep the dashboard at parity with the printed reports, but we keep adding more to the printed reports, and we just can't keep up on the dashboard side. So we're working. We are trying here. Another fun thing is, like I said, the mapping capabilities. Let's hope this works. Come on. Is not happy. Oh, there we go. Sometimes it takes a little bit. Also, I'm a little lagged here. So here we have obviously a map of Nebraska by county, 93 counties. We also have city level data. So you can see if we wanted to evaluate Blue Hills. Here's Alliance. First time I saw that I was at Alliance, but I guess it's Alliance. Going down to Blue Hill. Where'd you go? So sometimes this data is not necessarily super useful, because if you look, City of Blue Hill is the red outline, and then the census tract, because we are trying to map census tract data underneath city boundaries. There's just one census tract in the city, so it's not necessarily the most useful set of data, but it does exist, and it is here. County, come on. However, we might get easier. Sorry, there we go. But wherever possible, so we see population 2018, it's all fun. But wherever possible, we do have census tract zooming at the county level. So let's say we're trying to find population by age. We want just, maybe we're trying to see if we want to find, build a senior center, and we just want to look at the population 65 and older in Webster County. Where are you, Webster? I know you're over here somewhere. There you are. So you can click on that and you zoom in. There's only 2 census tracts in Webster County, and if you remember, Blue Hill City is up here. But you can see, there's 321 people over the age of 65 in the top census tract, and 491 in the bottom census tract. These get a little more granular when you start looking at census or counties with much larger cities. The idea behind a census tract is they try to draw the census tract boundaries to have roughly the same amount of population. So that's why when you look at more rural counties, you might have 2 census tracts, because there's there's not that many population. When you look at more populated and densely populated counties, you have much higher levels of census tracts. So these maps make a little bit more sense when you're kind of zooming in on more densely urban population. There's the city of Lincoln right there. Okay, that's cool. Another super fun thing, let's hope it works. Let's go back to population. Sorry, like I said, there's a little lag. I'm driving someone else's computer, so we had a good connectivity. We have a couple different charts here. We like building these out. There will be more, don't you worry. There's always more. This is a bubble cloud for population 2018 post-census estimates for the entire state, broken down by county. So it's a really fun way to see and quickly see where the population distribution throughout the state lives. Douglas, Sarpy, Lancaster County, followed by Buffalo and Hall. And if you haven't had a chance to smash around a bubble chart, I highly recommend it, especially week 5 in quarantine. It's surprisingly stress relief. Another thing we added for this year are migration flow trends. This is a migration flow chart. This is based on IRS tax return data. It's the most accurate data for interstate and intrastate migration in the country, because it's actually matching your tax returns. If you file a tax return in one place and move and file in a different place, the IRS can connect those dots and they make that data available for analysis. At first blush, this chart looks very, very messy. And it is messy because it's drawing where everyone's moving. But if you hover over, a county where you want to evaluate more, Douglas County, you can see where those people are flowing from. So there's a lot of, intrastate migration between Sarpy and Douglas County. The width of that band are the amount of people moving into that county. So if your band, so Douglas, you can kind of see Douglas, the band moving into Douglas County is slightly smaller than Sarpy County. So you can see that there's more people moving into Sarpy from Douglas. You can also hover over that, and we see that there's about 3,908 people moving from Douglas to Sarpy. Yeah. Webster was over here. Where'd you go? There you are. The one person that moved, or the one household that moved to Webster County, moved from Adams County. So, that's 2017, 2018 IRS tax data. You can also see intrastate or interstate from other states. Iowa is a big one. So you have a lot of flow between Iowa. That makes sense. And then we see more or less California is a little bit, Lancaster, Douglas, Sarpy, Texas is normally a big one. Douglas, Lancaster, Sarpy. So if you're interested to see where people are coming from, this is a great place to check it out. And this is just per state to county, statewide as well. So that's the fun demographic economic housing. Oh shoot, So I know I'm running short on time. I apologize, but I will be wrapping up here shortly. If you are, they're like, oh, this is fun, but I'm a data geek too, so I want to do my own data. That's great. It's all right here. You just highlight what you want, click that button, click this button down there. It should download as an Excel sheet for you, and then you can go around and play with it, however you want. You can also, like I said, on any chart, has a data download section, so it's all right there. Even this crazy Chaz chart has a data download section, so you can really get into it all there, wherever it went to. It used to be right there. Then we have an About tab, because this is sponsored by the Nebraska Investment Finance Authority as a public good for the state of Nebraska and beyond the state of Nebraska. We get people looking at this tool from all over the country and the world. If you're trying to, build housing in Nebraska or something like that, this is a great resource for that. So that's there. And then you can download the profile reports down here. Like I said, only 31 of the largest cities have their own written report. So wherever possible, that's why it defaults to the county where the smaller cities are residing, because the county level data is probably as close as you're going to get to that. So, all right, that's the very fast and dirty. I can talk for hours. Hopefully in June, we'll have a conference, and come and see me again. I'd love to meet y'all face to face, and please let me know. Digging through these, I have uncovered a couple issues. Don't worry, I am on them. John, Royce, and Robin, those will be pushed today if you see any of them. And there's also a bug reporting on the demographics tab, or the welcome tab. If you do come across a bug, or you feel like something's not quite right, just send me an email. My email's right there. I'll take care of it immediately. Pretty much. We have a very fast turnaround. So, so I hope that's my spiel. I apologize if I went a little long. So,
You're good, Tim. Thank you. We'll open it up for some questions and answers from our participants today. Amir did have a question that he put in the chat box. Do you have an idea when the 2019 and 2020 data might be appearing or added to the
So
dashboard?
this profile is released annually, because the data that's in it is rolled out. It comes out throughout the entire year. The 2019 American Community Survey isn't even released until December. So we normally push this slightly before the IFA conference in February or March. So it'll be a little bit of time to get that data, because it's not even out yet. So that's that. 2019 population estimates don't come out until later in June or July. That's if the schedule remains the same. I don't know if there's a release changes based on the COVID thing. So we are looking at, traditionally we have only updated the data set once a year, but we are thinking and looking at, updating it at least, as a rolling thing. And that's something that I'd have to speak with the NIFA crew about.
Okay, great. And Judy had asked, and I think you touched on it, so forgive me if I'm repeating a question, but she wanted to know if the 30%
I think
household
that's,
cost
yeah,
included
total housing costs.
utilities.
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
it should. Yeah, it should. Yeah.
Okay, super. So what questions are bubbling up for any of you today? Tim put a lot of time and effort and energy into his presentation, for which we are very grateful, but what questions do you have for him?
I have two screens going, so I'm having a hard time figuring out where my controls are, but I want to know if he's available to walk through this when I'm ready to sit down and pull information for a community.
Yeah, I mean, I'm around. I'm not really going much place. If you want to get another kind of training, like a smaller training session, I'd get in touch with John, Robin, or Royce at NIFA. And I'd be more than happy to do webinar trainings like this again, anytime. So I'd ping them, and then I'd be more than happy to do that. If that's
Perfect.
okay, John. I don't mean to like throw you guys into it.
Perfect. I'm a numbers person, though I'm not sure I have the depth of numbers that you have, Tim, but fascinating information, such a value, because there's so much information as you prepare a grant application or a study, or just even want to report to your community leaders what's going on in your community. So good information. And Tim has mentioned it, and I neglected to say it, but thanks to our friends at NIFA for introducing us to Tim for today's presentation, because they were the ones who connected us and got us started on Tim's trail, so to speak, and getting him here. So I just got a comment from somebody saying that they just wanted to share that they were thrilled with the dashboard.
Great.
So, so kudos and a thumbs up from an individual who just sent me a text. So
Cool.
would you have a question? What is a common question you get about communities, Tim, that can be answered with the dashboard information?
Well, I mean, the first ones off the top of the bat, whenever you're just saying what's going on, number one, population growth or decline, you just want to hit the highlights: population growth, age of that population. There's a lot of aging population across the country, just baby boomers. That's a standard thing. Economic trends. Unfortunately, on the smaller level stuff, it's really important to, I don't have the control anymore. If you look at employment, labor force, and employment growth, that's a very important statistic to have. Most of the, throughout the country after the Great Recession, unemployment rate has been decreasing. But is it decreasing because the labor force is falling faster than the employment, or is it decreasing because employment's rising faster than labor force? You want to be in that rising thing, but that's not necessarily the falling thing. So that's a very important thing to look at. Type of households, so housing stock, the mix, most of it in Nebraska is single family, but also vintage of housing stock, which I think is in there. If it's not, it will be. How old is your housing stock? Or if you have older stock, and I know off the top of my head, the non-entitlement area of Nebraska has about 20% of its housing stock that was built before 1939. So that's a quite amount. That's a lot of housing stock that's old. It might not necessarily be in the best condition. So, is it rehabable or dilapidated to tear down? Land is a scarce resource, especially in environments with affordability issues. You want to be able to access all structures whenever possible. So top of my head, I'd say population growth, decline, age cohorts, your trending labor force data, and housing type and vintage.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple more questions for you. I'm just going to combine them. First of all, Steve wants to know why you're wearing a tie when you're working from home.
A tie, and I have actual work pants on too, so I'm not just not halving it. So
Okay.
It kind of gets me in my game face,
Okay.
and to be honest, it's nice to get in normal clothes.
Okay, and then Michael is asking, are there any plans to add a projection feature for population, housing in the future, etc.?
That's something that we had discussed. We do this type of thing for 2 other states, Wyoming and Iowa. Both of those do have a household forecast feature. That is something that, you know, we can certainly explore with NIFA when we have another conversation about that. So that is something that we have the ability to do and also do in other states. So
Okay.
short answer, maybe. But.
Okay, this is a comment. Taryn from the Department of, and I'll probably get it wrong, Environment and Energy says that this is really great information. It will help our communities who are interested in applying for EPA brownfield grants. So thanks for sharing. So that's a crossover I probably would not have put together with the dashboard, that it's useful for not only housing grants and housing studies, but for other items as well, such as brownfield, as she mentioned.
Yes, I didn't even think about that either. So that's
okay.
great.
So we have a question as well. Vacant housing at the address level is often the easiest way to address shortages to some degree. In this system, do you aggregate total vacant units from the USPS parcel service or post office, excuse me, not the census, at the tract level or address level?
Our vacant housing units counts in this are from the census, but from my understanding, that data is compiled based on the USPS vacancy. It's probably nowhere near as clean or as accurate as the USPS stuff, but in this we use the census.
Okay.
Good question though.
Okay, great. So good discussion. What else is on anyone's mind? Or maybe as you're thinking about a question, can you tell us one item or one thing that maybe Tim shared that jumped out at you today from his discussion and from the dashboard in general? Well, and while you're thinking about that, I do have a question that just popped in from Anna. Young people, especially including herself, are interested in living in older homes that have character and histories rather than newer homes that might be larger. Is there a measurement for older housing stock that is still in good condition?
Yes. In the profile, the actual written report, so if you go to the dashboard and in the profile reports tab, or I forgot to show it off, under the reports tab, there are all the reports that you can download. There's 93 counties, 31 cities. In those, under the reports, so kind of more towards the end. In there, we do get data from the Property and Assessment Tax Division, state of Nebraska, and we pull assessor data. So we do have assessor data that does cross-tabulate condition of housing and, you know, age of housing. So we do, yes, so that data is not in the dashboard, unfortunately, yet, but it is in the written reports. So you will be able to find the number of households by age in good condition per county, and I think in the cities too. I'd have to double check, but
okay.
Yes. So there, those guys all have it.
Okay, wonderful. So is there something that jumped out at you today in Tim's presentation, or maybe something that you'd like to know more about the dashboard? And can you see this being used in your communities?
I sure hope so.
Well, I know that Tim has agreed to make himself available for further discussion. So if someone would like to know more or have more questions, Tim, how do we get a hold of you?
Feel free to just send me an email. I'm always checking that. So that's probably the easiest and fastest way to get in touch with me.
Okay, and we are displaying your email on the screen, tgotgetru@westernes.com. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned, thanks for the information. Wonderful. A lot to digest and sort through. But as we begin to wrap up, is there a housing topic that some of you participating today would like to see on a future webinar? Our housing study theme has developed as a result of someone at a recent gathering say, you know, we'd like to know more about housing studies. And so we developed that theme of housing topics in our webinar. So if you have an idea, Sharon and I would love to hear from you, and our contact information is there on the screen for your use. So before we jump in and tell you what next month's webinar topic is, I wanted to just share an opportunity with you. Last month I went to a calligraphy class, spent my birthday morning in Arapahoe with 10 to 15 individuals. I've always been interested in calligraphy, so we all got together and spent 3 hours learning the art of calligraphy. And as we departed, the gal told us, use every opportunity you can to practice and hone your calligraphy skills. So with the directed health measures that we live under currently, I've found several opportunities to do that. So I know now some of you are wondering what in the world calligraphy has to do with housing and HomeNE. Well, the common theme is opportunity. And this week we here at SCED gave you an opportunity to help and improve HomeNE through the distribution of a survey via Constant Contact. We spent a couple hours this past week, and you can see our board there. We did what is called a question storming session, and we just threw up questions and put them on the board about HomeNE. We tried not to answer them. We just tried to throw questions up, and so you can see the end result on your screen. And one of the questions that were answered was with a survey. We really want to know what value people are getting from HomeNE. That's one of the 10 questions that you're being asked to answer. So less than 10 minutes of your time. And we're giving you the opportunity to help us expand and grow and build HomeNE in the future by answering that survey. So find it in your email. I think it was sent out Monday afternoon with a reminder about today's webinar. And we definitely want your input. So feel free to take advantage of that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sharon to introduce next month's topic.
All right, thank you, Lori, and thanks again, Tim. There were some good comments. Some of them are going to go on and do a lot of bubble graphs and play around with that. So for the people that are stuck at home and maybe don't have much to do, this will give them all kinds of time and ways to fill it. So next month, we will have, hopefully, State Senator Matt Williams join us and talk about the successes and impacts from around the state as a result of the Rural Workforce Housing Program. As you remember, Senator Williams introduced that legislation 3 years ago, and it provided about $7 million in funding across the state. Several of those dollars were matched through NIFA, and so there were, I think, about 14 projects across the state. It was so well received that he introduced LB 773 this year to provide an additional $10 million in funding from the general fund for rural workforce housing again. We don't know if that's been approved yet because, of course, everything got called off, but the legislature will reconvene and they will pass a budget, and depending where else the money has gone, there's been a few places pulling on those resources, as you might all know. But if he's not in session, he will be here. If he is in session, we'll have a surprise for you. It might be a surprise for us too, but we'll be here next month. We'll be happy to have you here with us, and hope you all can stay healthy and stay hopeful as we continue to endure this. Tim, thanks again for being here. And with that, are there any last questions or comments to wrap us up? I see we have several comments that say thank you for having it. Great presentation, Tim. So that's great.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure chatting with y'all.
Great to spend an hour with you. Is that it, Lori?
I think so, yes. So with that, we'll see all of you back here on May 21st. So thanks for joining us again today, Tim, and to everyone else who took the time. See you next month.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.